gentlemen, welcome to my favorite part of the episode, the Loop Storytime interview. We have the one and only Mark Megibow from Face Vocal Band sitting in with us today. Mark, how are you doing, man?
Doing great, Luke. Thanks
Uh,
for having me on here.
of course. I knew when I had the opportunity to start sitting down with musicians. You have been a huge factor in my career as a looping musician, as well as with Float Like a Buffalo and all those opportunities that you've been able to be a part of with us. And so I knew I would just wanted to get to see behind the curtain. We've talked a little bit, but I haven't been able to really go into detail about you. And so let's kick this off early. Tell us about yourself, man. Tell us how you got started.
How I got started? I got started I grew up in Topeka, Kansas. I have known since I was 6 or 7 years old that I wanted to be on stage in one way or another. And there's a story around that, but we can get to it or not. And it didn't matter for me what I did on stage. When I was younger, I actually was more focused on being a stage actor, and I did all sorts of productions on stage through high school, and that included musicals. I've always loved to sing, and so singing has always been a big part of my life. It always got me a lot of positive attention, even as a little kid. So that was always positively reinforced. But my one true love in the performance world has always been percussion. I started playing drums in third grade, and that took me all the way into college. I was essentially a percussion major. I was a music ed major in college, but percussion has always been my instrument, and everything about percussion. I went to Northwestern University, which of course is much more classically focused. So I have a classical training background, but I also at the same time was playing in loud, obnoxious rock bands in Chicago, and I've played in pit orchestras. I'm a huge marching band geek. And so yeah, like you name it, if you can label it percussion, I've played it. I love it, and that took me to, so it was in college that the combination of percussion and singing introduced me to this thing called a cappella, which I had never heard of before as a thing. And some friends of mine said, "Hey, we're going to start this a cappella group." I'm like, "What's that?" And they played me a cassette tape. They played me a cassette tape of the Bobs, and the Bobs did pretty much all rock and pop music. And it was just four people, and I'm listening to it, and they're like, "That's just voices. That's just voices." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Because frankly, I knew about things like barbershop quartets, and there was vocal jazz ensembles and stuff. Those things weren't necessarily my interest. When they said that we could sound like a rock band, but just using our voices, I was all in on that. And so I sang with the group at Northwestern for about 4 years. Still, beatboxing still was a tiny, tiny part of that. I really didn't get into it that much. And I listened to old recordings, and it was like, meh. So fast forward to when I moved here to Colorado, and Face Vocal Band was just getting started. When I auditioned, I told them I could beatbox, and they took me at my word. And so then I really had to learn. And that's now been, as of this fall, that'll be a 20-year project
Wow.
that I've been doing, and that's really when I became a beatboxer is in these last 20 years. But all of that background, the percussion, the singing, the performance, loving to be on stage, and loving rock music, all of that kind of that's been my whole life, and it kind of took me to where I am with Face today.
That's awesome, man. Beatboxing it's such a fascinating craft because there's so many degrees of what it
Hmm.
is. Because when the average person tries to beatbox, it's like boots and cats and boots and cats and boots, and you go from that to what you do with Face, which is it creates such a cool organic sound. And then you go even further with the guys who have the vocal synthesis on their
Yeah.
vocal, and that they're going, like we've talked about it before, that goes anywhere from standard a cappella to heavy electronic to like classic rock, where they have synthesizer and modulators on their voice that are making them sound
Right.
like lead guitars.
Exactly, exactly. And I've started delineating in my head, because I say beatboxing because that's a frame of reference for people, but I actually don't consider myself a beatboxer. I'm a drummer in a band. I use my mouth to do that, right? I use beatbox sounds to do that. But what I focus on and what I specialize in is sounding like a drummer, and I use beatboxing for that. So I consider beatboxing to be really a soloistic art, and there's a lot more breadth and a lot more stuff that beatboxers can do. I would even say there's a lot of things that most beatboxers can do, that basic beatboxers can do, that I can't do.
Hmm.
And because I've never had to. I came into beatboxing from this concept of a cappella and being a drummer in a band. And so everything that I've done has been trying to emulate what I used to do with real drums, but just doing it with my face. And so I've never really studied the broader art of beatboxing that much. And it's why I don't battle. People are like, oh, Mark, you should go do beatbox battle. And I'm like, no, I would not make it very far in a beatbox battle. I mean, I'm the guy, I can get on stage and I can beatbox for 2 hours straight. But would you want to hear a drum set player play a drum set for 2 hours straight? Maybe not. So that's, for me, that's a huge distinction, that just in my own mind, in terms of what I do versus what I hear beatboxers do. When I hear real beatboxers, man, I'm blown away. I'm just wow.
Just I've been, since I started getting in the looping project, I've been doing just a ton of research and following a lot of beatboxers on Facebook, because that's the loop station that I use, the RC505. That's primarily used by beatboxers because you have so many vocal synthesis and you can create all the tracks. And they're like, okay, yeah, just make this little, or we're just gonna put a few effects on. This is gonna be our drum sound. And I'm like, I don't even know. Like, show me what's going on here. Don't show me what's going on. Can I get an X-ray of the inside of your mouth to figure out how you're going with like such a clear sound?
You know that now exists, right? There, I have now seen published in the last year or so. I don't know if it was ultrasound or X-ray, but there was profile, there was straight on, and there was also camera down the throat of a professional beatboxer, and showing what all of the different. I think it was more for speech language pathologists who study. But
I'm gonna watch that now. That's awesome. Yeah. That's super, super cool.
I'm like, wow, that's what I look like when I do that? That's kind of gross.
Oh, I can only imagine. And it's, like you said, vocal synthesis versus just being, like, I think your distinction, being a drummer in a band versus being a soloistic beatboxer, because beatboxers, they are the solo ones, they do everything. They cover all the vocal spectrum. They cover the harmonies, the melodies, the everything, and then you have the opportunity to just lay it down with and like what. And we can bring up this conversation a little bit later, but like I remember you and I talked a while back about the arrangement of a cappella versus the arrangement of any other music, and you guys have experimented with different arrangements that. The bigger isn't always better. More isn't always better in a cappella, and it's a lot simpler in certain arrangement techniques. You have to go to create the aesthetic appeal that creates an a cappella song that slaps, with a better term, or with the lack of a better term. Yeah. But that's cool, man. So then, like, you were a drummer, you were a vocalist, you were a singer, then Face, like. How did Face is 20 years old, started in Boulder, Colorado. That's 20 years old. Congratulations to you. Like to make you feel a little bit older. I remember hearing about you guys in high school. And it was just like, because band nerd, marching band nerd, but on the instrumental side of it, where it's like I had choir friends who knew all about it. And it's like this Boulder group, and I've shared videos of you guys when I was like 19 years old, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And so tell me a little bit about the Face journey that you guys started on the streets of Boulder, Pearl Street Mall, to internationally touring, to Red Rocks, to everything that you guys have done in between.
Well, it has been the stuff of dreams, to be sure. I mean, again, when I say I've known my whole life that I wanted to be a performer, it still took me until Face to start checking off all the boxes that I've always had. And I mean, I've been on stage constantly in one way, shape, or form, and it's all been awesome, and I've loved all of it. Some of it made some money, most of it didn't.
Hmm.
But that's is my passion, it's my heart, and so I could never quit. And there was always that feeling inside me that I'm just as good as anyone else I've ever seen. And maybe I can't do what that guy does as good as that guy does, but I can do what I do as good as what I do. and and Face is made up of a bunch of guys who all kind of had that same latent sense. All of the guys come from an a cappella background, but most of them, I think I'm now the only one who didn't go to CU
Hmm.
Boulder. So most of them had either met or had heard of each other at CU Boulder. And it was after graduation that a couple of guys, Joseph and Ben, said, in college, your groups have, you're all college students, and not everyone takes it as seriously as others because they're focusing on their studies and stuff. All the guys in Face were the ones who were either founders, directors, leaders. They were the ones driving their college groups.
Hmm.
And so when we all kind of found each other through initially an audition process and stuff, but we were very like-minded in that we were all the ones who like, this is for fun, like we love it, but we want to do something with this. And
Hmm.
from the beginning, there was this sense of this is professional, this is a business, this is for the long haul. This is what we want to do. And so we always kind of had that shared vision. Now, Forrest is the bass. Forrest and I are the only two who would be called original members who are still left. But Cody joined after a year, and he was in for about 5, and he was out for about 5. Started a family. Now he's been back for the past 5, 7, 8. I don't know how the math works out, but
Hmm.
Driver and Steven both started around 03, 04. So even though they're not technically original members, the guys that are together right now in Face have been together for over 15 years.
Yeah.
And so we started off playing on Pearl Street Mall. We would play at the farmers market. The
Hmm.
farmers market would take any local musician. You play for free. You put out a hat for tips. We would, our initial email list was about 200 people. It was not opt-in. If we knew you, we were emailing you, and we would say, hey, we're going to be playing at the Boulder Farmers Market. You should come hear us. And we started drawing crowds at the farmers market. And I think that was our first taste of, wow, this could actually be a thing. And we started booking gigs from the farmers market. People would come up and say, do you do private parties? Do you do stuff, and like, wow, this is a thing. And so we, after about a year, we got kicked out of the farmers market. This is a true story. We were playing, they let us play about once a month, and the crowds started getting so big. It was always in the food court. The crowds started getting so big, customers couldn't get to the booths.
Hmm.
And so the salespeople were like, we're not selling when they're playing. Like yes, it's great to have crowds of people, but we were politely asked to not come back because we were causing too much problems with the size. So that was the start of it. And then a couple other cool things was there's always been a cappella in Colorado. It's always been kind of up and down in popularity. But for a while, there was a bar just off of Pearl Street Mall called the Redfish Brew House, styled after the New Orleans Redfish restaurant and bar. And there was a guy in town, Raul Charette, who was a big old school a cappella guy, and he negotiated a Monday night a cappella night at
That's cool.
Redfish. And so same thing. We got to play there like once a month on Monday nights, and same thing. We started causing fire code issues at the Redfish, where there was 100 people in a 70-seat place, and people were like on the floors, and servers couldn't get around to bringing people their food, and but that was a huge part of it. And then the other one was, people will remember fondly, Nisi's Bistro in Lafayette, which thanks to the pandemic has closed its doors, possibly forever. We're still waiting to hear as things start to open up whether or not they'll find a new location. But their lease was over at the place where they had been for all of those years, and so they let that go. But Nisi's was another place, was brand new about the same time that we were brand new, and for a while we were playing there weekly. It was selling out We played there weekly, and the shows were selling out 6 weeks in advance.
Jesus.
And they started, and this was on Tuesdays. They gave us like every Tuesday, and it was still selling out every 6 weeks in advance. And that was another thing that started creating this mystique around. Before anyone even knew who we were, there was this, oh yeah, at Face, you can't get tickets. You can't get tickets to a Face show. It's always sold out. And all of these things are just built one after another, built the popularity, built this mystique of who are these guys. I promise you, if you heard us back then, you would not have been as impressed. It's definitely a testament of how marketing and what we were doing was still pretty unique. There's a lot of acapella, but there are very few acapella groups that really are all in on this rock band experience and the high energy and jumping around and sweating and stuff. So there was definitely some uniqueness to what we were doing, and again this marketing hubbub that was being created around what we did. That definitely pulled us forward, and then we had to continually improve ourselves to kind of catch up to the reputation that we were gaining. We listened to old recordings and we're like, why are we still here?
That's funny.
Why were people coming to hear that? So it was a wild couple of years as things were really starting to grow. But tons of fun. Yeah.
Well, you said that there weren't very many a cappella groups that steered into like the rock band experience. So what kind of decision was that? I mean, was that like the 20-year you guys were starting out? It's like, okay, let's do this, but let's do this different. Let's do this, but let's do this on our own terms. How did you guys kind of find the path in which you went down that you found the utmost success, and has that path deviated from the get-go to where you guys are at now?
No, it has not deviated.
It is same goal.
That from the beginning. It's been, and I was the one from the beginning, because again, I didn't actually come from an a cappella background or a vocal music background. I love to sing. I sang in a a cappella group in college, but that was new to me. I'm a rocker. I'm an instrumental drummer. And so that's what I wanted to create. So the other guys had a harder time letting go of the term a cappella, but I was like, let's just say for a second that a cappella is what they do, but what we do is all vocal rock. We're an all vocal rock band. We're not an a cappella group. And yeah, by definition, we're a cappella. A cappella means voices only, right? But in terms of the impression that people get when, I don't know if it's still true, because thanks to things like pentatonics and stuff like that, but back 20 years ago, for sure, if you said a cappella, that brought a certain thing to mind. That brought to mind college groups, which, let's face it, most college groups are in it for the fun, not for the musical excellence, and that's not a knock on them. Yeah, I mean, that's not a knock on them. It's you don't, as I said before, you don't have time, and not all the singers are as invested in making it perfection. They're in it for fun, and so there's everyone knows their college a cappella groups and barbershop, and none of those things were things that we wanted to be. We wanted to be competing for the stages where other bands compete. And I think that's one of the reasons, another reason why we grew so fast is because I think a lot of our fans similarly had heard a cappella, wouldn't necessarily follow an a cappella group, but when they heard us, they were like, oh, that's kind of cool. So it really was. It was a decision from the beginning. And I pushed it hard. I admit it. There were some of our earlier arrangements, there wasn't a drum part. They needed me singing so that we had enough voices filling out the chords and stuff like that. And I'm like, there are very few rock bands where you ask your drummer to leave the stage for a song and then come back, or they had the drums cutting out in the middle of a song so that because this note is more important than the drums. And I'm like, you would never do that. Say, drummer, you're going to stop. You're going to pick up a guitar. I realize there are exceptions, but that was the point I was trying to make. That no, it's like we're gonna have a drummer through all of it, So we did. We did make those decisions. It comes out also in song selection and style of our arranging. I was very. It was very refreshing that as we started playing at more national a cappella gatherings, which we didn't do a lot of until these past 5-7 years or so, all of the national a cappella stuff, it's all East Coast, West Coast. There's very little in the middle of the country. Most of those groups all know each other. They're constantly competing against each other. We never really did that. We were kind of our own thing right here in Colorado. And so people didn't know much about us. They heard recordings, but again, we focused on live entertainment. We didn't focus on studio work and recording. So our recordings weren't necessarily as accurate or as indicative of who we were. So we were kind of an enigma for a long time. And in the last 5 years or so, we've played a lot more of these national, well now international a cappella gatherings. And the feedback we've been getting from lifelong a cappella people is we're still one of the few groups that are a rock band. And that come across as this, we still, because I mean, I'm 50 now. I'm old, okay? And a cappella is most of the singers are younger. And so same thing, like, how are we going to hold up? Are they going to golf clap for us? Oh, look at those old farts. They still try, and like, no, like we were told there's an a cappella party and then Face brings the party. And it was really refreshing to hear from our peers, the feedback that our kind of our goal and our direction from the beginning is still really coming across, that there's still something slightly different about what we do versus what other a cappella groups do, and that's been kind of cool to learn.
Well, I think I took a sales marketing class a while back on learning how to expand your brand, and the number one thing is your right to win. Why should someone buy your product over anyone else's product? And if you can figure out that, your level of success in whatever market you're going to is going to be much, much easier to find success in, because it's automatically, well, why you guys? Oh, because we're this. You can find 70 other groups that do this, but no one who does what I do or our project or this. And so that's super cool to be able to have that, just kind of to have the same vision for 20 years, to have and have found continued ever growing success, man. Because I mean, you guys have found success early and then have just been riding that train for a long, long time, and it doesn't seem that it's slowing down. I mean, you guys have 2 Red Rocks headliners under your belt. You had international tours under your belt. You had, I mean, Jesus, you had Carnegie Hall pre-COVID. Like that's
almost
right there.
It's been rescheduled again for 2022.
I mean, and like, kids, if you're watching this, say, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? And it's practice, practice, practice. Like, it's incredible. I can't, at my level, I cannot fathom the feeling, because when we had the opportunity to open for you guys at Red Rocks, which, like, we'll get to that one in a little bit. That was a jaw-dropping, life-changing experience of being able to walk out on that stage and be on that level.
I'm getting goosies.
So I want your opinion, because everyone's like, oh my God, what was it like being down there? And this is the one thing that shocked me. Yes. You want to stare up because you're at Red Rocks, but then your neck starts to hurt, so you start looking down. And then you have this voice in your head that's like, start looking up at the crowd, you idiot. You're playing in this venue. And you're like, okay. Because, like, while we're down there, I'm rocking out, looking at this crowd, looking at this venue. You're like, man, I'm staring up a lot, right? I'm going to let my neck relax. And you're like, this is dumb. But what Red Rocks for you guys? Red Rocks for first time, second time. Tell me about it.
I think it was Cody who said this. Really encapsulated it for me. There are things that we look forward to in life that we build up really huge. And when we get there, it kind of falls short of the expectation, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was the exact opposite of that. We had this built up in our heads as the biggest thing ever, the coolest thing ever, like, oh my gosh, achieving lifelong dreams. And it was way better than that. It was overwhelming. The biggest difference between the first time and the second time is that the first time was almost overwhelming, and we almost lost ourselves and forgot to take it all in when the first time. I don't remember. There's a lot of things I don't remember from the first time. I don't remember the opening band's performances nearly as much because I was so, and I listened to all of them, but I was still so in my head about our own performance that I really wasn't present to what was going on. The second time I listened to all the opening bands, but I really felt like I was there. I felt more like I was supporting the opening bands, like I was there for them. And that was a huge difference because it is. How do you describe it? I mean, everyone's seen Red Rocks from the stands, but that morning you drive up and you walk in from the loading dock, which is down below, and you walk through these hallways, and then you come up a stairway, and then you walk out, and you're at the base of the bowl, looking up, and it's before there's nobody there but the joggers and stuff like that, the sightseers, but it's just immense because I love mountains anyway. Like if I stepped into any bowl looking up, like that, I would be in awe, just the majesty of the scenery and everything that Red Rocks means. It all just like, whoa. And so take your breath away, like moments that take your breath away. Like really, I was like, breathe. Right. Okay. So it was amazing. I would say two of the things that really stood out for me. One was we had just hired a manager. We'd been self-managed. So this would be 2017. We'd been self-managed all the way through 2016. And finally, we'd gotten so busy that we really needed someone to take care of the business. So we'd stop dropping balls and we could start focusing on music again. And so Heather has been our manager since then, and she was the one who organized Red Rocks for us. In fact, she was the one who actually booked it for us. We had been trying for 3 years and was never able to book it. And it wasn't until we had a manager that, and we had grown over those 3 years too, but she booked it for us. She planned the whole thing. And in hindsight, we were looking at that and like, there's no way, if we had actually been successful and booked it ourselves, there's no way we would have pulled it off the way that Heather pulled it off, having that additional entity taking care of business, so that the show wouldn't have been as good and the fan experience wouldn't have been, I mean, everything. So that was huge. Like, we could not have done it without her. That was awesome. The other thing was we had just shy of 7,000 people show up in a 10,000 seat place. And you all know Red Rocks, people pack to the front, and as it gets dark, you can't see the back rows. So it looked sold out. It was not sold out, but it looked sold out. And that was more people than in our wildest imaginations that we thought we would get. We know how many people around town come to Face shows because, around the holidays, we do a lot of holiday concerts. We know how many tickets we sell. So we had a good guess. And we'd done the math. We knew at Red Rocks, if we could sell 2,500 tickets, that we would at least break even. And that means you get to play Red Rocks for free. Yep. I'm in, right? Like who would say no to that? So, so we're like, we knew we could sell 2,500 tickets. That was not in question. And after that, it was like, well, if we could get 3,000, 3,500, we'll actually make some money. If we could get 4,000 to 5,000, which is not out of the question, we might get 4,000 to 5,000 people there. It would actually make some real money. Wow, 5,000 people. Can you imagine? And by the end of the night, it was something around 6,700, 6,900 people. And that also was just one of those things that, like, really? We did that? Really? We did that. Later, after the fact, we found out how many people flew in for the concert. Because there's no way to hobnob with all of the people afterwards. Like, first of all, Red Rocks tells people to leave, but also there's no way we could catch up with 6,000 people after the show. So we didn't even know everyone who was there until afterwards, and people were sending us pictures and stuff. Like, you were there? You were there? What? So it's really special. And that is why. So understand that we never played that stage before 2017. Our headline concert was the first time we'd ever played that stage. We tried everything. We tried Film on the Rocks, being an opening band for Film on the Rocks. We lobby hard every single year for that. There's some big band festival that happens every year up there that we would try to get on. We would try to get, hey, Red Rocks, we are a local band. We can open for anybody, you know. So as the big tours come through, let us open. Nothing worked. And so finally, that's when we started calling them and say, what does it take to just book Red Rocks? And so so when we finally got there, it was by our own doing, which is another thing we're pretty proud of. But also from the beginning, it's like, let's find a bunch of bands who've never gotten to play Red Rocks, and let's bring them along with us, because damn it, it took us 17 years to get there, and we had to do it ourselves. There's so many great bands out there, just like us, who deserve a shot, and they would own that stage, but they've never been given the opportunity. Here's our chance. Let's we had wild imaginations of making a day-long music festival, but we wisely shot that down, because again, organizational nightmare. It's still something that in the back of our minds, wouldn't that be cool if we could do it? But we went from that to saying, let's have 2 opening bands. Okay, let's make it 3. Okay, and let's have someone sing the national anthem. Let's bring as many people on stage as we possibly can. And so, you know, and so again, we did it again in 2019, which is how we met you guys, and couldn't have been happier with all the bands that we've had over those years. So it's no one should have to wait that long.
Yeah, right.
it's so great.
And it's that for us, for Float Like a Buffalo, that was kind of a game-changing day for us, because when you said, like, does it rise up to satisfaction? Is it overwhelming? There was a few shows that we had played in our career that, like, at the end of it, I didn't remember a single thing. It was I was a shell of a man sitting at the end of it. And I remember for Red Rocks, it felt like a well-fitted shirt. That, like, for us, we had worked our butts off to be able to, like, we were preparing for a Gothic headliner the following month. And so when you guys reached out to us for it, it was like this kind of like zoom out for a second and go, okay, this is for real. And we worked very, very hard to prep a set that felt like we were going to show or put our best foot forward. And I remember at the end of it, it just like, it was overwhelming in a good capacity, but like that feeling when you put on like a $3,000 suit coat and it just kind of fits and you're like, ooh, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Like you kind of dripping a little bit, and it feels right. And so for us as a band, that was a huge just, I mean, it was Red Rocks. It was incredible. There's no other words to put behind it. And so from the 7 of us to you, thank you so much, because we have then, that helped us propel some of our other stuff forward, because the moment you go, oh yeah, and you opened at Red Rocks, people are like, oh what? Oh, you guys have played on that stage? What's that like? And it for us, if your goal is to help create opportunities for up and coming bands, man, you did it and then some. So thank you so much on that one.
Yeah, well, so first of all, you deserved it. Like, you know how many bands were presenting themselves to us, and I think all of the bands we did based on fan voting anyway. But then we knew that there was going to be one or 2 bands that we heard that weren't up in the fan voting, but that we still thought, no, this band is really good. Like they should be on there. And that was you guys, you know. So first of all, you deserved it. Second of all, I forget who I told in your band. So my wife also comes from marching band background. We met at band camp.
Oh, there you go.
Here. And so we love any band with live horns. We're like, right. And so after Red Rocks, my wife Sarah started telling me that Face was now her second favorite band. So congratulations. But the other thing I totally forgot what I was going to say. But the moment. Sometimes we find ourselves in moments where the moment's bigger than we are. Mm-hmm. Right. And you feel that in hindsight. Other times you find yourself in moments where, like you said, where they really fit. You know, we had those 2 earlier on. We tried 2 reality shows in our career. And the first one definitely led to the second one's. I'll put success in quotes. But we went out to a America's Got Talent audition a couple years before we did the sing off, and we were over our heads. Like the moment, we were not prepared for what that moment was and what it needed, and we learned a lot from it. And so when the sing off auditions came around, and so we were on the sing off in 2009. So the auditions would have been that year, earlier that year. We knew what to expect because we had done the AGT thing. And the sing off was better suited for us anyway because it was vocal groups, But there's two reasons why we feel like we got on the sing off. One was because of our failed AGT experience, and the other one was the story. But we don't have to get into that either. But we had a good package deal around our band and the story that the producers knew was going to be like this great tearjerker story and stuff like that. So that's those two came together. But like to your point about being prepared for moments, the other thing we weren't prepared for was with the sing off was we had overwhelming attention thrown at us all of a sudden in 2009 that we were not prepared for. We did not have our website and our social media and all that stuff. We did not have it set up to receive that amount of attention, and we feel like we lost a lot of opportunity because we had millions of people coming to us, and we felt like we didn't have much to give them back. And so, we did not have a net big enough, if you will, to capture all of those people and keep them. And so they came and went in a big hurry, right? And it was something we didn't think about and we weren't prepared for. If we had that kind of attention again at this point, we would know exactly what to do and how to handle it. But it's all learning, And here's the thing: it starts here. This is why we do it. I'm on stage my whole life. Like that is a given. That's what I'm going to do. It's who I am. And so the results don't matter. When it starts there, the results don't matter. And this is to every musician out there, every performer, every artist out there who knows that it's in their heart and they know that their art, their music is worth it. You know it's worth it. And the results don't matter. Keep in mind that when Face started, I was already 30, right? I'm sure there are a lot of artists out there in their 20s who are already feeling the frustration of the results. Well, I hadn't done anything that you could post a Wikipedia article about by age 30, not even 35. Face wasn't really even that notable, until Sing Off is what got us our Wikipedia article. I was 39 when that happened, right? So don't put a timeline, don't put a deadline, I should say. Don't put a deadline on the results of your success. Keep going. The dream is infinite. The dream is endless, and as long as the dream is there and as long as it's in your heart, it is attainable, right? I certainly had in my head that I was going to be successful way earlier than I was, and that I was going to make millions of dollars. Then I was going to retire and become a grown-up. Like this is like, I don't know if other people think that way, but that was my life path. No, I got married and became a grown-up first, and then the musical success finally started to kick in. So it didn't happen in the order that I'd planned, but it's happening now, and there's still plenty of room for us to grow. There's still plenty of things for me to do. With all of this, and I don't know. I hope people hear that because for me it was never a matter of wow, it's not happening. Is it ever going to happen? I think that's the deadly thought process. It's not happening. Will it ever happen? It's never going to happen. Don't let your brain go down that path, right? This is something I do for me. This is something that I love. Something I do for the audience because I think I have something that the audience wants and would enjoy. And and then don't worry about the results. I mean, yeah, you got to market yourself, you got to keep putting yourself out there, all that stuff. I mean, yes, but if there's anything I've learned is that there was no deadline on my dream, and so eventually it started to come true. And so don't put a deadline. Don't put a deadline on your dream either.
And you said like started at 30. I've been doing performing arts, the same thing my entire life. I started in church choir when I was 6, did elementary school music, middle school, high school, toured the country doing drum corps, did college band, and in my early 20s just kind of not gave up on music, but just there wasn't anything going on. I wasn't in college. I didn't have a need to practice, and I didn't have an output to practice besides just like, and it's when I found dueling pianos at 24, 25, and a group of people brought me in, and that's where I kind of found the joy of entertaining. But like even then, that what started as a dueling piano corporate entertainment project then gave me the confidence and wherewithal to be confident on stage, which then gave me the confidence and wherewithal to then join Float Like a Buffalo. And then that gave me the confidence and wherewithal to start doing solo stuff, which then turned into the looping project, which is at 30 years. Like I got all this for my 30th birthday in April. And so this has only been 10 months of working, give or take, that and I don't know, I really like this part because I have that conversation a lot with friends where it's I don't know what they're hemming and hawing and kind of struggling with what the next direction is, and you go, what are you doing to feed here? You can pay your bills, you can work for friends, family, loved ones, but if you got to be feeding this moral compass, this moral center, this thing that is true to you, and for people who are I don't know what it takes to be happy. That's like I thankfully found music. You thankfully found music. There's a lot of artists who have thankfully found their passion in music, or at least they think that they found their passion in music. And so you're able to either do everything or work every day to make music your passion, to be able to feed that, or you've worked to make music your job, that your job allows you to feed here. And so
you have to make room for it in your life, even when it's not the thing paying the bills, right?
Yep.
And here's the other funny thing that I think about is that I had the dream when I was 6, and for my whole life, did I know in high school that I was going to be a professional beatboxer? Did I know that I was going to be in a internationally touring a cappella group when I was in high school? I hadn't even heard those words before, you know. And so that's the other cool thing about art and music and performance is that where you find your future might not have even been created yet, or you might not have created it or discovered it in yourself. I had a lot of paths I could go because I had experience in, you know, classical and rock and musicals and stage. So I had a lot of directions that I could go, and you know, in a weird way, they all kind of came together into one piece that I'm now doing. And so if whatever you're doing isn't working for you, keep doing it or keep doing something. Keep reaching out. Keep if it feeds your heart. Oh man, with technology these days, it's so much easier to do your own thing. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm so old school. Like when I moved to Colorado and I was, you know, my I don't know, late mid-20s, I guess. I was still just a drummer. I had a drum set stacked up in the corner of my apartment, and I felt like if I'm a drummer, there's nothing I can do by myself. I have to have a group, and I couldn't find a group, you know. And then it's not true anymore. Like if I were a drummer today, I could very easily start up solo projects and stuff like that. So the opportunities really are even broader now for artists to be able to create and find something to do, you know, and find something to create, something to put out there, and then because you keep putting yourself out there, you might start attracting like-minded or like thinking or similar artists who have a similar style and belief and taste and genre and tone that you do, and you might find and then then now you're in collaboration mode with people, and where all the places that can lead. So it really is this. The worst thing you can do is quit.
Mm.
Like, I've decided that in music, I don't know in other arts, but in music, it's last band standing.
Yeah.
Like, that's who wins. That's who wins, is last band standing. Because the bands that don't make it, it's because they quit. And I realize that that's kind of a simplistic thing to say, but what I'm saying is they quit before they had a chance to be noticed, or before they had a chance to come into their own, or before they had a chance to hone their sound into who they really were meant to be as a band.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a million reasons to quit. Like, pick one. Like, I get it. There's, but the worst thing you can do is quit. And if you're in a project where the project decides to quit because you're working with other people, then you don't quit, and you immediately find other things that you can do in the meantime, because you don't just create a group. Hey, let's have a group. Some people do, but it's hard to do. But you can still stay busy as an individual, and still hone your craft, and still find your voice, so to speak, find your sound, even in the absence of all that other stuff, even in the absence of success. So don't quit. And that's, well, it's never going to happen. You don't know that.
Well, that's I think a very good point of, well, it's not going to happen for them. Maybe not. Maybe they don't have what it takes to be big, but does it make them happy? And are people willing to, or like, if you have people that are willing to listen to you, and if it makes you happy, keep going. Why not? What else do you have to do? What if something makes you happy, do it as long as you can.
My college group, before Face, my college group might have been my favorite thing that I'd ever done musically. And all I have to show for it is a cassette tape, and maybe some old photos that I never show anybody. But it's one of my favorite memories of all time. And it brought me joy then, and it still brings me joy to think about, right? If that had been the end of my music career, if I after college, if I grew up and had a family and did other things for the rest of my life, I still would have had that to cling to, and I still would have loved every minute of it. And I would have shrugged, and I would have said, you know what, music didn't happen for me, but that was awesome, And so, to your point, you can still create awesome things that are awesome memories that feed your heart, and you look back and you're like, I'm still glad I did it. Like, I'm so glad I did it. Like, I can't imagine my life without it. And so there's all these reasons. Some of the best advice I ever got was, I was a kid actor in adult productions, right? Like in Topeka, Kansas. Community theater was actually really good in Topeka, Kansas. You wouldn't peg it as an artistic center, but it was really good. And I had a pretty good run in like middle school, high school, playing a lot of kid roles in the shows that needed them. And all of the actors playing the lead roles, they were all my heroes, and one of them signed my poster, at the end of the run. I ran around getting all their signatures on my poster. And he wrote, if you do it for the money, you'll be good. If you do it because you love it, you'll be great. You've got it. Go for it. That has stuck with me, as you can hear, for the rest of my life. And it still steers me today. When we as a band are making decisions and things like that, like what's important, like this past year in the pandemic, where money became far less of an option, that thought still steered me. Well, why am I doing it? Am I doing it for the money? I won't lie. It became my income. It became my job. Face has been my job and my only source of income. Well, my only source of income. I have a spouse, but I was making more than she was. and so for the past 4 or 5 years, it really has been my money. But it didn't change why I was doing it. And so this past year, when all of a sudden it wasn't the money coming in, we had to have a lot of chats and stuff like that. And but it still steered me. Well, I'm not doing it for the money, and I am, but I'm not. It's not the priority. I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I love it, because it brings me joy, and because by now I've learned that it brings thousands of other people joy, and that's still worth something. That's still important to consider. So that's why we're still here.
All right. And I think that's a huge part of COVID, and I'm glad you touched on it, where it's like a lot of us had a long time to spend looking in the mirror, and a lot of us had a long time to spend with just our thoughts. And I remember I think I was listening to Chappelle on Joe Rogan, and he said it for a lot of America, for everyone in the world, you got to look at your stuff. You had to look at your partner, at your house, at your furniture, at your art, and you had to ask, "Am I happy with this?" Because for a long time you weren't stuck with it. You could leave, you could go and experience other things, but for the first time, people were just there, and for a lot of people, they were not happy with it, and for a lot of artists, I think, at least for me personally, I found, and I said this multiple times, that man, you really gotta love performing for this, because I know you guys did the yard shows. I know you guys have done countless virtual streams, and Float had been in the same field where you're doing this stuff to like a cat that's sitting in the yard, and you're like, "Here you go, cat," and they're just kind of staring back at you, and they don't even care. And
No.
and you're seeing online that people are commenting and responding because it means something to them, and that was a big driving factor for myself and for all of us at Float Like a Buffalo, where we were doing it for us because we needed to content was king throughout this. If you were able to maintain content creation, people paid attention to it because there was nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
if you did anything, someone would watch it. If you
And
did
people,
like, cause what else were they gonna do? They were stuck in their
yeah,
houses for
yeah,
6 months,
yeah.
and so if you were able to create any content, and then after the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 12th show, to no one watching, it's okay. How do I still find passion and enjoying this? Because I'm sure with you guys, you're a high energy rock band. Audience feedback is a huge, huge part of that. And when you're out there killing it and there's like 5 people watching in person, that's your significant others who have seen your show 10,000 times. You're like, I'm just happy to be playing music right now. Be doing
Yeah,
nothing, and instead I'm playing music, and that's enough for me.
yeah, yeah. It's I, I echo all of those points. A lot of our backyard shows, there were the neighbors on the other side of the fence who, obviously, Forrest, whose yard we were using, he told um, all of the neighbors that we were going to be doing this. Well, the neighbors on the other side of the fence, uh, we started seeing like 10, 15 people over there in their backyard on the nights of our shows, and they were starting to host little parties.
Like, thank you
You know,
guys for watching. That's not socially distant though,
you know,
so
it was all family. It was all
oh,
family.
okay.
Um,
All one household, I'm sure.
doesn't matter. It was like, but they would have. But we got applause after songs,
Right?
and stuff. And it was kind of cool, and yeah, we learned that the way the yard was laid out, we learned that we could invite a handful of people, and so we've got this thriving Patreon community, and so we started offering just you know based on people who've been supporting us for a long time. We started offering a couple seats here and there, and so we would have 6 to 10 people in the yard, and man, those shows were different.
Yeah.
We played better for 6 to 10 people than we did for nobody.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine that. Like live performance. Who knew, right? And for a brief time, things started opening up, as you know. And so I think one of the first audiences we played for, where it was sort of a random collection of people, um, was an audience of 12 in a little basement bar venue in Louisville, and they were the loudest 12-person audience I'd ever heard in my entire life. And it was, again, not just them bringing it for us, but they hadn't heard live music in a long time, right? We got to play at the Pace Center in the fall, and it was a show that we had booked, gosh, probably more for the spring or the summer. Um, and it had sold out, but social distancing, they could only fit about a third of the house. So we agreed to do 3 shows so that all of those people who who bought tickets previously could still go. Or and and the first one we did was also the first show that the Pace Center. This is in Parker. This is the first show that the Pace Center had hosted in 6 months. It was also the first live audience we were playing for in 6 months, and it was also the first live performance that I think it was 50 to 100 people, that they had seen in 6 months. And man, it was like a first date. It was like, I don't know how to describe it. The people in the audience were drooling, they were slathering. You could have put the 3rd grade school choir on the stage, and that audience would have been like, ah! Because it was like live music and an other person there and stuff. And so the energy was just like, it was over the top. We were feeling it. We were flying around, doing what we do. We got off stage, right? We hadn't worked that hard in months, right? Because the energy, you can't fabricate it, right? You can try, like you can get yourself pumped up and stuff, but there's no way to recreate that human to human interaction. So it's been really weird. It's been really weird. But what I do is, after the shows, I read through all the comments on Facebook and on YouTube and stuff, and I feel that stage energy after the fact. I'm reading their comments and their excitement and their and I'm starting to get giddy again, and I'm already done with the show, because I know that we had an impact, and we did. It's like those comments made sure that we did another one later.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to do them every 2 weeks, and it's the feedback after the fact is like, okay, we'll do another one, and it's it's brought in some money, because we've been streaming for free, because again, people need it, and we don't want to create that wall. Mm-hmm. But we put up our Venmo and our PayPal and stuff, and we've got a great loyal following, and so people are going to the PayPal and the Venmo, and so we're making some money. We did 44 shows in 2020.
Jesus.
Now I know there are a lot of artists who are watching this, Luke, who would be like, I would love to have 44 shows even before, pre-pandemic, right? But the year before, we did 123 shows. And so for us, that was like, we did 18 of those shows in January, February. We did almost half of those shows in the first 2 months of the year. Then we did 23 or so live streams over the course of the year. And there were a handful of shows that we did, live shows that we didn't stream, and that's how you get up to 44. And again, it's all relative. For us, that's really low. For other people, they'd be like, "Wow,
I would love to." Yeah,
I'll sign up. I'll sign up for that.
One year we played 108 one year, and back in 2018 or 2019, we played 108 shows, and so then coming into this one, like. Yeah, it's that same kind of. It's a redefinition of success, because though you used to do 100, 44 is impressive. For the people who did 44, 5 is impressive, and so
exactly. It's all relative.
I can't sell out Red Rocks. Well, can you sell 175 tickets for a socially distant Red Rocks? Well, I can't sell out this venue. Can you move 50? Because after 2020. Who cares if there's an asterisk next to it? This gave artists so many opportunities, especially younger up and coming people who didn't have the opportunity because of track record and the venues that are booked out 7 months in advance or a year in advance by booking agencies that are now those booking agencies are like, I'm not booking my national acts right now. So venues are giving bands who might not have had a chance to have a chance, and bands who didn't have the time. We just, oh, we're too busy. We're too busy. We're too busy. Okay, let's focus on music now. Let's focus on this. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on the other thing. That COVID, if you were in the capacity in which you could be successfully productive for your mental health throughout this time, COVID created a very even keel for the big dogs were doing the same thing as the little guys.
Yeah.
And everyone was just kind of on that same level, and the only difference was how many people were watching your stream. The product was
the virtual performance concept, where everyone is recording in the safety of their own home and stuff, right? I saw some great stuff from Sheryl Crow and her band, and it looked exactly the same as the stuff that we were throwing together with, the cat in the background, or you could read what book titles that they have on their shelves and,
exactly.
and stuff like that. And they're all, some of them are in their jammies, and but they're making music, and it was not what's the word? It was not simultaneous. It was it was not synchronous, right? It was an asynchronous music project that they all pieced together. That when they put it all together, it sounded awesome. It looked awesome. It allowed us to do our thing. It doesn't have to look a certain way, right? Our expectations got blown up.
Yeah.
And the saying it's better than nothing, in the past that was a cop out. Well, it's better than nothing. That used to be like a justification or a cop out. Now that's a rallying cry.
Mm-hmm.
That's inspiration now. It's better than nothing because, well, nothing can replace live music. Nothing can replace performing together. I think about schools choir programs and stuff. My son is in his high school choir, and there's nothing can replace getting the kids together and singing together and performing together. Nothing can replace that. I completely agree. The virtual choir project, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't do that, there would be nothing, and we can't have nothing, right? We still have to do something. We have to, for our own hearts. We have to for what the general public needs. And so, expectations got blown up, and we got to kind of reevaluate what our expectations are and what our priorities are, what's important to us. But it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I mean, I think if two things you said can summarize 2020 is it's weird and it's better than nothing.
So weird.
I think, and hopefully we look forward and hopefully we have some sort of light that we can start looking back. I hate the expression return to normalcy, but it's the best we got right now. And it's I feel you can feel the little tingles in the air that's like, okay, just maybe, but who knows right now? Honest to God, who knows? And we have to be okay with whatever option happens.
Yeah. And that's it. I'm confident in the future, but I have no idea. I have no idea what the when is. But let me ask you something. Is that any different than the before times? If you're in music, you can be confident about your professional prospects. The only thing you can't control is the when, right? Like, all I know is that you're going to be successful. All I know is that you've got a product that is awesome, that people will want, and that's all. And all I know is that all you can do is go out there and keep putting it out there and keep putting it out there and keep putting it out there and putting it out there. And then there's this word eventually. Eventually, you will get noticed, and eventually, it will start paying dividends. It's the eventually that we can't control.
Yeah.
The only way we can control that is by our own activity, and because every time you put yourself out there, there's the odds. There's that tiny drop in the bucket where something might happen because of that instance. We had a saying in Face forever. Every gig leads to another gig.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our gigs got booked because of a gig. Most of the big connections that we made were because some random person was in the audience who we didn't even know was in the audience. Every gig is an audition. That's another saying that we would have, is like every gig is an audition, every gig leads to another gig. And that's no different now, right?
Yeah.
We have no idea when things are going to start opening up again, and we have no idea what the future is going to look like as compared to what it looked like before. But there's still a lot of stuff that is in our control, and we can still be putting ourselves out there, and we can still be creating opportunities for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be, everything's on hold until, right? Like, well, when this happens, then I will feel successful. Well, no, it wasn't like that before,
Yeah.
and it's not really like that now either. I mean, yes, we all have to work harder right now, I think,
Yeah.
than before, and some of us got spoiled by the past 5 years, of things, really, the momentum that we had, and things were just rolling for us and stuff, and we got a little spoiled, and how hard we're working now feels a lot like how hard we were working 10 years ago.
Right.
But the question is, well, what do you want? What do you want? When do you want it? And is it still in your heart?